Is a critical role in that.
The first time I kind of walked through the doors, you see the big statement of the vision and the mission of the Sloan School to develop principled leaders who will make an impact to improve the world. I think that immediately resonated with me.
One of the aspects that I value and admire about the students in the program, their commitment to personal and professional development at mid-career.
You challenge yourself while you're here. It's not that you're just come here to study, you come here to challenge yourself, to be a better leader, to become a better professional.
We, as a group, talked many times about how you go from success, because all of us certainly felt successful when we came here, to significance.
The MIT Sloan Fellows program is created on the foundation of 3 interdependent pillars: leadership, innovation, and global perspective. These pillars are designed to enhance global leadership skills, champion innovation, and view the world through a broader lens with a greater understanding of how economic, social, and political factors can impact an organization.
The great thing about the Sloan Fellows program is that you're really learning from your cohort. They are subject matter experts within their own fields, and they really bring a lot of diversity of thought into the process.
There's an impressive amount of talent density in this place. But it's not about that one individual, but rather the collective effort of the whole group.
We have a phrase that says no fellow left behind, and we very much ascribe to that particular mantra.
Everybody has a great sense of helping each other out and thinking that they are part of a system which is bigger than them.
It's a very good combination of hard and intense, but also very human.
Well, the Sloan Fellow students are very international. They're completely global from, I think, every single corner of the world. And I teach global economics, global management, global political analysis. So it's great fun. I just basically have to line up the conversation, give them the right material, and we go at it.
Professors weren't just saying that they wanted to get everyone involved, but actually getting people involved in the conversation.
The accessibility is amazing. From just a conversation to a cup of coffee to an email that's answered at 10 p.m.
The program prepares you for career advancement and to be a well-rounded leader who can tackle the world's most important challenges.
That mission statement really sets this institution, and more specifically this program, apart from its peer set.
From the very early moment that I was visiting the school, I knew it was the right choice for me.
We really believe in the values that this university stands for.
So there's an incredible sort of energy in this place overall that I think one can only feel.
I think every one of us would tell you that we are changed forever by this experience.
So if you are in that moment, just take the opportunity. Don't wait.
I like to start that video. I think that it really embraces sort of our community here and what not only the MIT Sloan Fellows MBA program is striving to always be, but also is very representative of the MIT Sloan and MIT community, which of course our Sloan Fellows are a part of. So I'm just going to touch on some of the themes we heard in that video and dive a little deeper. But again, my goal is to get our students up here to answer all your questions and hopefully see yourself in them and what their experience here at MIT Sloan is about. I start always with the mission statement. It is the backbone of our school, of our institute at MIT. This is the mission statement of MIT Sloan: to develop principled, innovative leaders, or innovative leaders who improve the world. And it's not something that we put on a slide or chisel on the wall. It really is in the water here. It is a huge part of every conversation we have. It's often embedded in the faculty's syllabus, and I find myself constantly having conversations with folks and thinking, okay, is this a principled move? Are we making the right decision based on the mission of the institute and the school? So I'm going to start very high level. I think one of the most important pieces of information in joining an organization like or community like MIT and the Sloan Fellows is that you are joining a much bigger network. Every year we have about 110 fellows graduate from this program. The program's been around for nearly 90 years, but those students then go on to be a part of the greater MIT Sloan community, as well as the larger global MIT alumni community, depending on where you live in the world. And I think my favorite piece to point out about the statistics of our alumni community is a couple of years ago, a large consulting firm did a study of the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the companies that were running around the world founded by MIT alumni, and it would be the nearly 10th largest economy in the world, just behind Brazil. That was in 2015, so we'll see where MIT takes us into the future, but it is an incredibly powerful community that you're joining, not just as a student, which is what we're here to talk about today, but also after your 12 months of time here. So at MIT Sloan, we think about our degree programs as a portfolio. We have 3 ways to earn an MBA. Obviously, we're here today to talk about the Sloan Fellows MBA, which is one of our 2 executive level MBAs. We also have a more traditional EMBA, where you are actually required to work full time and come to campus one or two weekends a month over 20 months. But today we're here to talk about the full-time residential, almost like a sabbatical from your professional life, to really deep dive into the student experience. We also have a few specialty degrees. One is a Master's of Finance and a Master's of Business Analytics. Those are what we call career launchers. Those students tend to have about 14 months of work experience, plus or minus. And then we have a handful of dual degrees. The two I talk the most about are Leaders of Global Operations. Those students earn in 2 years an MBA from Sloan and a dual Master's of Engineering from MIT, so an intense 2 years for them. And we also have a number of dual degrees with Harvard at the Kennedy School and then across some other specialty centers at MIT. So MIT Sloan Fellows MBA program, it is a 12-month deep dive program. You have the option of earning an MBA, which is the more common credential that our students are earning these days. Many, many years ago, everyone at MIT who studied management earned an MS, or an SM, as we refer to it here at MIT. Now, in order to earn the SM or the MS, the Master's of Science, you do have to complete a thesis. And a thesis would take up a majority of your, a large percentage of your electives, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Majority of our students, about 95%, ultimately do pursue the MBA, but find other ways to dabble in research if that's of interest to them. As I mentioned, what's unique about Sloan Fellows over 12 months to many of our peer school mid-career programs is that it's a full immersion. It's 12 months on campus, deep diving into the experience here at MIT. It's still MIT. It's a rigorous, quantitative, data-driven program. It's very much grounded in the science of management, and then intertwined with sort of those business essentials, all of those different verticals you might see in your own organization, accounting, finance, operations, and then set next to data science, system dynamics, econ, both macro and micro. At MIT Sloan, we're pretty well known for our very flexible curriculum. We have a 1-semester core, which allows you then to use the rest of your time at MIT to pursue the electives you want, to customize the experience for what you need to do when you graduate. And I'm going to show a map of what the actual academic experience looks like in a few slides. You are a Sloan Fellow at MIT Sloan, which makes you a graduate student at MIT. So you have full access to every resource that any graduate student at MIT has over those 12 months. And then I think you'll hear a little later, and hopefully you saw it in the earlier video, that it is a community. It's an incredibly tight community of students and their families and their significant others, whatever that partner system means for you. They're very much embedded in the experience from day one, and that's on purpose, and we'll talk about that more in a moment too. So as you heard my dean, Rod Garcia, say in the video, the Sloan Fellows is takes the general management curriculum of MIT and bases it into 3 pillars: leadership, innovation, and global perspective. You know, at this point in your career, you're taking on much larger leadership roles or anticipate taking on much larger, more general management leadership roles. So it is important that within the curriculum, we're enhancing those leadership experiences for you outside of the extracurricular activities. It's MIT innovation, entrepreneurship. Even if it's not something you see as a career path, it's something you're going to experience. It's how you're iterating on ideas, how you're tackling the problems in your own institutions. And then global perspective. You've probably seen, if you've been on our website, that about 80% of our students come from outside of the US. So already the minute you sit in the classroom, and when we sit in this room today, it's a very global perspective, a very global audience in our classroom. MIT Sloan as a community is about 60-40, 60% US citizen, 40% non-US citizen. But the Sloan Fellows historically have been highly global audience in the classroom. So I'm going to walk through the curriculum over 12 months pretty quickly. I think the caveat is that it's always subject to change. We are a very iterative environment, as I mentioned, and so there's always committees looking at what we're doing. So we kick off the 12-month experience. I'm going to say this is more like 15 months, but I'll tell you where the 12 months start. Orientation happens every April for the incoming class. It's highly recommended, but not required. During that time, a lot of our students, you get introduced to the campus, they find their housing, they do some of that housekeeping stuff. They like to bring their families with them, introduce them to the life in Cambridge or the Boston area. There's a little bit of academic prep, and then we introduce you to the 360 leadership assessment, which every Sloan Fellow does before joining the program. When you come back on campus in June for your first semester, the summer semester, you'll pick back up that 360 leadership assessment that you see here at the bottom with your executive coach. So imagine going into business school for 12 months with lots of rich data on your strengths and your blind spots, and how to focus your time while you're here, and the executive coaches help you with that. In the summer, that's that 1 semester core at MIT I talked about. You're going to pursue 7 of 9 required classes over the summer. This class that's getting ready to graduate in June was the pilot class for a new summer schedule. Traditionally, it had been Monday through Friday, jam-packed, and through a lot of iterative conversations with leadership and students and alumni, they have retailored the schedule to be, and I'll let you guys correct me later if I'm wrong here, more like a Monday, Wednesday, Friday classroom schedule. It's still 8:30 to 4. You're usually taking 2 or 3 classes at a time in a couple of weeks period. But we try not to have all the quantitative courses at once. We do think about having quantitative courses in the morning. We have a lot of conversations around what's the right academic experience for you and the faculty in the room. And then Tuesdays and Thursdays and evenings are reserved for studying, teamwork, exploring other resources, guest speakers, things like that we want to bring into help carve out the whole experience. But it is a pretty intense summer, and that is purposeful so that when you come back in the fall, your first semester on campus with the rest of the institute back, you can deep dive into electives. You may have 1 or 2 of those required courses that make up the full 9 in the fall. They may happen in the spring. But really, the majority of your time is designed by you, and you get to pick which electives you want to take around MIT Sloan. The final 2 semesters final semester we break into 2 buckets. At MIT, we have a traditionally long winter break. Most of January, the students return to class the first week of February. It's called Independent Activities Period, and this is MIT-wide. As a Sloan Fellow student, you don't have any requirements during IAP, so you can travel, you can return home, you can work on your own initiatives, or there's lots of electives to take with your fellow EMBA classmates. Great way to network with that community, or deep dive into a subject that maybe you just want 2 days in. IAP offers some really fun classes. I've heard students take baking, business plan writing, wine tasting. I've heard some really fun classes, and they're offered by senior lecturers or alumni that have an expertise out in the world. And then the spring semester, which we're in right now, we're about halfway through, you wrap up those final courses. If you're pursuing a thesis, you're going to do a lot of writing during this semester and won't have as much time to allocate towards other elective courses. So it's a pretty jam-packed 12 months, but I think my impression is that the fall and spring feel more like a traditional MBA student, where the summer is that intense, sort of full week experience. So I'll deep dive a little bit more into what customized means. You're not bound to just the electives of MIT Sloan. As a graduate student at MIT, you can cross-register up to 3 times across MIT, which means the media lab, the real estate school, the engineering school. I have a lot of 2-year MBAs that take the first level of computer science, which I'm told is the hardest class they've ever taken. Or you can cross-register at Harvard into one of their professional schools, like the Kennedy School for Government, the law school, or HBS, and vice versa. All of those populations are cross-registering into Sloan. And you're also then integrating into the greater MIT community. So now you have your Sloan Fellows community, and you're making a larger network with the 2-year MBAs and the other portfolio degree members I mentioned earlier. Action learning is a cornerstone of the MIT Sloan experience. It's a pedagogy or a way of learning that was developed at MIT. It is often referred to as project-based learning or working on a real-world project. It really grounds you in what you're doing, especially in a program like the Sloan Fellows. If you're looking to transition to a new part of the world or a new industry or a new function, this is a great way in a semester's course to work on a very specific project, maybe in a new part of the world or that new industry, and get a deep dive into what the tactics are, what the culture is, what the community is like to work in that industry or that part of the world, and earn credit for it, but work with real leadership on a real problem. Certificates, this is a way if you sort of look at the course catalog and say, I don't even know what to pick. There's hundreds of electives every semester. Certificates let you put a little bit more structure around that. You can get a certificate in healthcare, sustainability, and analytics. Those are open to the greater MIT community. A lot of our students use them if they're looking to pivot a little bit and become an expert. It's a great way to signal to the market that you have an analytics strength that maybe you didn't have before you came to Sloan. Or if you're looking to get more into healthcare sustainability, obviously that's a great way to do that as well. One of my favorite things that was launched this year is the Innovation and Entrepreneurship track for the Sloan Fellows. We have this also in our 2-year MBA, but it takes 2 years to complete the requirements. And we love to say this institute is driven by student ideas and student conversations. The current students picked up a conversation to drive that forward with the deans and the faculty committee to generate and create the Sloan Fellows 1-year version of an entrepreneurship and innovation track. And I believe Alfred maybe talk a little bit later about going on its first industry trek to Silicon Valley next week. So just an example of, we're not here to just sort of pass you through over 12 months. This is a very iterative community-based experience that if you have an idea, you can drive it. It may not impact you in this year, but what you're leaving behind for a future class is incredibly valuable. So we can't go through a presentation about MIT Sloan without talking about our amazing faculty. We saw Simon Johnson, he's our faculty director. We saw him on the video. He's incredibly engaged in this program. He hosts the students on a trek to Washington, D.C., sort of opens up his, I was told this other day, this word is probably outdated, but his Rolodex. He was the former chief economist at the IMF in 2007-8, and then worked pretty closely with Democrats in the Obama White House on economic policy. But he is the director of the faculty committee here for Sloan Fellows. Tabby Surian and John Sturman have been teaching in this program for many years, and both are leaders in their fields of study, and both award-winning faculty, both from a research perspective, but also voted on by the student body, which I love. So finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about your support system. I can go on and on and on about the endless resources that we have here at MIT and in the Sloan Fellows program that are going to help you feel like you're successful in this program or make you successful in this program. There's incredible safety nets along the way to drive you forward together with your classmates. You heard a student in the video say no Sloan Fellow left behind. That very much resonates with the culture of MIT. But I want to point to the first one, which is your significant other, your friends, your family, your partner, whatever that means for you. Make sure that they're a part of this conversation as you get a little bit more serious about possibly pursuing a Sloan Fellows MBA program. They may have to move to Cambridge with you. I think it's a really exciting opportunity. We hope that they want to move to Cambridge with you or to the Boston area if you're not local, and be a part of this community and this experience with you. But it's important that you're talking to them about that as well. And then finally, career support. We get a lot of questions about, I'm going to take a year off of my career. It's going to go by so fast, and you're going to be sort of injected with all this knowledge and all this energy, and there is an incredible team of professionals who happen to sit behind me in the office behind us that are here to support you. About 40% of our students are what we call fully sponsored, so they're bonded. It is not a requirement of the program that you come in with a company sponsorship. Many of our students ultimately leave their jobs. Some keep the door open to return, but they're not bonded, say, financially or with time to go back to that organization. But regardless of what your plans are afterwards, whether you know exactly where you're going to be in 12 months, you're keeping the door open, or you're a job seeker, this career development office, or what we call the CDO, is here to support you in that conversation. It's not a job, it's not a placement office. They're here to help you understand that the skills you're developing, how you turn a toolbox into something that's a brand. And then they have lots of networking opportunities, lots of individual coaching, whether it's just the job searching and resume stage of or phase of the stage, or you're negotiating an offer. They're there to help you with all those individual stages. Plus, there's some larger coursework that's embedded in the curriculum overall for Sloan Fellows. So I just want to point out a few of facts about our current class. It is 111. We look to see somewhere between 110 plus or minus Sloan Fellow MBAs every year. I pointed out earlier that 80% of the class is non-US citizen. That's about 37 different countries represented in the current class. And it is, you'll see later, it is a range of years of experience from 10 to 20, but we're averaging just under 15, so about 14 years of work experience in the current class of 2019. So I'm going to ask our lovely students to come up and join me. So while you guys all think of your burning questions, both at home and in the room, I'm going to ask Leandro and Alfred if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were before this, what you were doing, and if you know where you're going next, great. If not, I know that a lot of people are still in the process of finalizing that.
Start? Yeah, sure. So thanks, Katy.
Yes, of course.
Thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Alfred from Singapore. I work for the Singapore Economic Development Board, which is a government agency. What we do is actually to develop strategies to grow Singapore's economy, identifying key sectors that will drive the competitiveness of our economy. Before this, I was actually in a venture building group, which is essentially a new function that was created within the organization, where we are trying to create a new pillar of growth for Singapore's economy by partnering some of the key stakeholders and companies that are already operating in Singapore to develop new businesses and grow those new businesses in Singapore itself. So what I'm going to do after this, I'm going back to the government, going back to the same agency but in a different function, where I'm looking at advanced manufacturing, trying to look at infusing Industry 4.0 technologies such as machine learning, AI, etc. on the manufacturing shop floor, and to drive some of these innovation efforts of the manufacturing industry across different industries that can range from environmental sciences to chemicals to clean technology and so on.
Great, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hello, my name is Leandro. I'm from Brazil. I used to work before coming to Sloan Fellows with technology in the largest bank, private bank in Brazil for the last 11 years. And I'm going back to the bank. I've been sponsored and I really love the way that they work and the relationship that I have with them. So I'm going back to the bank, still probably working with tech, but changing a little bit of the position, changing infrastructure for systems and development.
So I have plenty of questions that I could ask, but what questions do we have either in the room or from the chat online? Yes.
So both of you, thank you for sharing your stories. They're really interesting. I was curious, you're both going back to the companies that you came from. What is the one thing you're taking with you, or what has been your transformation in this transformative program that you're taking back with you?
Big question.
So yeah, I can take a stab at it first. Leandro can feel free to add on. I believe the way of thinking, that's probably one of the most immediate thoughts that come to my mind. Given that we are all mid-career professionals, we would have a way of doing things. We would have accumulated sufficient experience, and I think that actually triggers some muscle memory, especially when we deal with certain aspects of our workplace, right? Whether it's actually to drive a new initiative or to think about some of the new things that the organization could benefit from in terms of capturing greater value. And therein lies that a go-to approach or go-to perspective that I believe we should break out of that mold. And by coming here to MIT, by taking on the program itself, I believe we pick up new skills. One, learning from classmates that come from all across the world, across different industries. I think two, the other great accomplishment or great takeaway for us is really about learning from faculty. And learning about how different countries and different industries actually look at some of these problems that can then be applicable back to our own home countries or our own organizations.
Yeah, I would add that I will be much more data-driven, really MIT, by meaning data-driven, taking best decisions than I took before. And really know how to work with all this data that we are surrounded by in this age that we are living. Another point is about leadership. We talked about a little bit about the coach, we didn't talk very fast, we didn't talk a lot about the core courses that we have with our core team. So during all the summer, you have a core team that is the team that work with you for the 3 months, and they are very different people with different backgrounds, with different industries, countries, cultures. So this was an amazing experience. Like not only learn from all the 110 fellows that you have in the cohort, but working and living and doing everything together during the summer with that team was something that improved a lot the way that I think about, not only about Brazil in my case, but all about the world.
I'm going to pick up on something that both of you have mentioned, the diversity of industries in the class. The number of industries is similar to the number of countries represented, about 35 to 40 different industries represented in the class, as well as functions within those industries. And so I think sometimes people think, oh, MBA, like traditional paths, finance, banking, consulting, and MIT, so engineering. And that makes up about 1/3 to 40% of the experience, or the experience that folks bring into the classroom. But we have lots of folks coming from government, from military backgrounds, from nonprofit, from medicine. So healthcare is a huge bucket. It's not just on the manufacturing or the pharmaceutical side. It's incredibly diverse. And my goal is that when you come to class, you don't feel like you're sitting in a conference. You're not sitting around like-minded people that see the problems the way you do, that would always have the same theory or approach to tackle that problem, that you are learning from the people in the classroom as much as possible. And you heard Simon Johnson in the video say that he likes to just sort of tee it up, which is a very American term, but and then let the students debate it. Is there a class that really stands out for you, or a faculty that stands out for you guys as a very memorable class for you?
I think for me, Katy, you mentioned Simon's class, and that was really one of the class that I enjoyed a lot, because it's like a United Nations kind of a platform, right? where we talk about global issues like, Chile's rise from just being a resource-driven country to someone, an economy that brings in different perspectives and different industries that are trying to grow. We talk about, Japan, where they were one of the technology powerhouses in the 90s to now stagnating, and how can we actually drive the economy to break out of this deflation scenario. Or we talk about Singapore's case, for example, where it was one of the bright stars, that has grown from nothing to a first world economy, and what are some of the lessons that can be learned by other countries and other classmates in the group itself. So there isn't always a right answer, or actually there isn't a right answer, and it's really about bringing different perspectives, understanding why certain classmates think in a certain way, and at the end, it's what we take away. It's actually to continue some of these discussions and the debate outside of the classroom itself, because we are actually helping one another grow and one another develop, and that's actually a very powerful point that I would like to share. The other one is what, Katy, you mentioned a bit about the certificates.
Yes.
I thought for me, the analytics courses were also one of the key takeaways for me, because I'm actually an economist by training, certainly not an engineer or someone with a technical background like Leandro. So for me to be exposed to some of these things, to learn coding, to work with companies on a lab where we actually work on a real world situation or real world problem, specifically supply chain optimization, that is actually something that is very valuable, as it's really about applying some of the skill sets that we have learned in class to some of these real world situations.
So are you doing the entrepreneurship and innovation track and the analytics certificate?
So I'm going on the Silicon Valley track, but not doing the entrepreneurship track.
Great. Okay.
But I'm actually doing the healthcare certificate.
Oh wow. Okay.
And the analytics certificate.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Good to know. Great. You're busy. Leandro, what about yourself?
So I would share two very deep experiences that I had. One is MIT is not only about data-driven, but we have frameworks for a lot of stuff. And I came here to develop a little bit more of the strategic view and how to be more realistic and see not only the company, but the world in a different way. And we had a class during the summer with Duncan, the strategy class. It was completely amazing, like completely changed my view about how companies and structures work and how the world work in a good way. And I would like to share with you about the action learning that I did, Israel Lab. So I spent 2 months of studying about Israel here, about politics, history, and a lot of other stuff about Israel. And during the IEP in January, I stayed there for 3 weeks working in a company startup. One of the things that I really would like to do here, and I achieved it, was working in a startup in a very small environment, since I was used to work in a company with more than 100,000 people. So working with a startup for 40 people, and it was completely amazing, the experience of getting to know the Israelis, getting to know their culture in the place, working with them, and being at the same time the possibility of getting to know the surrounding areas was a very enriching experience.
Thank you. Do you have any questions from
so we have a question if anybody could speak on maybe like the entrepreneurship ecosystem a little bit, maybe specifically, I don't know if you know of a Sloan Fellow or anybody who has kind of, made the switch to entrepreneurship once they came into the program.
I can speak to an alumni, but can either of you, do you have any classmates going through it?
Yes.
Great. Why don't you go, and I'll finalize with the alumni.
Sure. So I'll start with that. I was just talking a little bit earlier with Lucas. When I arrived here, I first thought, we will study, I'll go back, I want to be executive, and that's it. And the whole environment, the whole classes are pushing you to, hey, think about a startup, why don't you think about that? Look how many opportunities that you have. And during the way, a lot of us, so fellows, got you a little bit about the entrepreneurship, and we have a huge ecosystem here in Boston. We have like a lot of competitions, a lot of VCs, a lot of opportunities to engage with. If you don't want to build your own startup, you can engage with other startups. So not only inside Sloan Fellows, but engineer, all the MIT, you have a lot of opportunities. So I am doing one startup. I'm in the entrepreneurship, participating of Sandbox, Delta V, and other kind of competitions that we have here. And this is a very wide, open environment for you to entrepreneurship, and you have a lot of support all the time. I really didn't thought about that before, but during the year, you have so many opportunities that you just engage with them and make it.
And if I can add to it, as well, I think people generally have the impression that you would have to have an idea before you can dabble into entrepreneurship. But actually, that's not the case, because there are many other classmates that are very keen to set up a new business or to go into startups, and sometimes they just seek out your thoughts, right? Whether you can provide some advisory, especially if you're from that particular industry or you have some experience before, and that's actually one way of participating, not only from building your own startup itself. And of course, Leandro mentioned that there are actually a lot of platforms, a lot of competitions like your hackathons. At MIT, there are like Sandbox, which offers up to 5,000 or 25,000 to 100,000 challenge, to even bigger competitions that actually span across the entire Boston. So these are some of the opportunities that you can actually participate in and get to know people. Cambridge Innovation Center is just next door, where they actually hold weekly mingling, mixer events, and it's actually about getting to know people, networking, and I think that's very important, because you never know where your next opportunity or where your next job could be, or how you can actually give back to society in the way of participating and providing some advisory on this.
Yeah, the community of MIT Sloan sits in a neighborhood where we're all sitting today called Kendall Square, and sometimes I forget what's an MIT Sloan event, what's an MIT event, and what's just an event that happens to be taking place in Kendall Square, because they want to tap into not only the academic community here, but a lot of the large MNCs that have put footprints here, from Microsoft's R&D center next door to us to all the global pharmaceutical companies, as well as companies like Facebook, Twitter. They're opening up centers for research here, and we've just learned that Boeing will open an autonomous research facility here in Kendall Square also. So it's hard to keep track of what's MIT and what's not, but you're still part of this greater community. I think the challenge is, how do you spend your time when you're here, not what am I going to do with my time while I'm here. There's just so much to do. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
How this specific tracks works? How to engage, is an elective course, how it works?
Yeah. So the tracks or the certificate, and you have a more insight to it, have certain buckets that you need to check. So it may have one bucket with 3 or 4 options, and you need to choose 2 of those electives. And they almost always have an action learning or a lab, what we call, component. A lab doesn't mean like a white coat and you stand at a bench. It means working with a real company on a real project. But they, what they do is just sort of, they put that structure back around what your academic experience is like, instead of being sort of a free-for-all in terms of picking. Do you want to talk a little bit quickly just about what your healthcare certificate's like?
So for example, if I can use the analytics certificate as an example, there are actually 3 key buckets. The first of which is the core, where you are required to take certain core classes that are very heavy analytics, very technical. Then the second bucket is actually what we call electives. So you can pick analytics applied to finance, analytics applied to healthcare, analytics applied to HR, etc. And that will actually, you have to take, I think, a couple of electives on that. And the last component, as Katy mentioned, is actually related to a lab, where you work in a team of 4, in a team of 5, where you are assigned to a company that sponsors a problem statement, and you would actually be part of a team that works toward tackling that particular problem statement, such that the company can actually take it back to the organization and apply it in their business itself. So that, in a nutshell, is the requirements to fulfill a certificate, and it will be the same for healthcare as well.
They are non-binding, so if you join one and then decide that, oh my gosh, that's my dream job and it has nothing to do with this, and I need to now take all these other electives, they're non-binding. So you can always, they're just harder, they're more difficult, if not impossible, to start midstream, because with only 2 semesters for electives, you can't go back in time to make up those courses. So it's better to start and change your mind than to have thought you wish you'd done it. So just in the interest of time, I'm going to ask my final question, and then I'm going to run quickly through sort of the application at a very high level. And then if you're able to stay around for questions afterwards, we're here. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. So my last question for you guys is, if you were sitting in their seats not too long ago, for some of you, for both of you, what's one piece of advice you would have for them while they're exploring and thinking about getting a mid-career MBA?
I think if I were in your shoes, the thing that I would actually tell myself or to share with you is actually to know clearly why you're doing an MBA at this stage of your career, and what are some of the objectives that you want to achieve at the end of the MBA itself. I think that personal reflection is very important, because it then allows you to be a bit more focused as you come into the program itself. By focus, I don't mean being a binding, like a guiding kind of a framework, but at least you know very clearly where are some of the potential starting points, and then pivoting as needed, because you may meet like-minded friends who would be doing a startup and you wanted to be part of it, or you may want to pivot to a different industry or a different function after getting exposed to some of the curriculum over here. So leave that flexibility, but at the same time, being clear what are some of the key takeaways that you want to get from a leadership perspective, from a global perspective, and of course, some of the innovation buckets that MIT always emphasizes.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would add that once you have kind of the idea of what you are coming for, how MIT is going to play the difference in this objective that you have. How MIT, and start exploring MIT early than just when you arrive here, because it's very huge. It's very broad. Like, you come and you think, hey, I'm going to do the Sloan Fellows program, but when you see you have so many opportunities, that if you have this in mind, you can achieve, I think, that faster and getting to know better MIT earlier than just arriving here. So you match what you need, what MIT can offer. That's almost everything, and where you can find.
Thank you. I know, I cannot believe your year is almost done, and I just got a calendar invite for some graduation festivities for your cohort, which is really exciting, but also just crazy that it's over. 12 months flies by really fast. So thank you both so much for coming. I'm just going to wrap up quickly, but please feel free to say.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So how do you make this happen? I talked a little bit at a high level what an ideal candidate for the Sloan Fellows MBA program at MIT looks like. We are looking for a minimum of 10 years full-time post-undergraduate or post-bachelor's degree work experiences. It's a range. It is quite a range at this point in people's career. There's not a right time to go back to school. So while we average 14, 15 years, it's a range from 10 upwards of 20, 25 years. In very, I see a typo, wow. In very rare occasions, we do have students with 8 to 9 years of experience. Those students are rising rapidly in their careers. Their peers have 15, 20 years of experience within their organization. We're in the Sloan Fellows program specifically, we're definitely looking for that leadership and management experience. You have experience managing teams, developing others, working on strategy, and specifically strategy and people that work outside of your division or outside your silo. How are you impacting not only the people around you, but the people within the greater part of the organization? It's MIT, it's a quantitative, rigorous program, so we do need to make sure that you're what I like to call quant comfy. I don't need you to go to bed every night with like your data analytics book, but I also don't want like the little hairs on the back of your neck to stand up when I say we're gonna take finance or it's time for accounting. If you're excited about making decisions through data, both quantitative and qualitative, then perhaps it is the right fit for you too. It's important for me to say that English language proficiency is very, very important. All of the curriculum is taught in English here at a fairly rapid pace. And as our students, thank you, you lined me up very well at the end there. It is a very transformational journey, and so being prepared for sort of the uncomfortableness of that transformation and knowing that you're here to work on yourself, both to be a better leader, a stronger manager, a stronger influencer, to have a greater impact when you lead the Sloan Fellows program, being ready for that is a very introspective experience. So start having those conversations with yourself, perhaps, or a mentor. The application components, these are all outlined in much more detail on our website. It's a fairly traditional business school application. I'm going to point out two pieces of the application that are a little bit unique to the MIT Sloan community. One is the organizational chart. This is for us to understand where you have impact in the organization, where your leadership is having impact in the organization. There are a couple templates in our online application you can follow, but there's no right or wrong, organizational chart. Every organization is different. What we've learned over time is that a vice president title in one organization means something completely different in another part of the world. So rather than us try to fill in the blanks, the organizational chart provides us with that data point for us to understand where you sit in your organization. The other is the video statement. This is a way for us to get to know your communication style, your personality. It should not be professionally edited. It should be 1 minute. If I had my cell phone, I'd say use your iPhone or whatever cell phone you prefer. Do not edit. Do not use a lighting crew. If you love to cook and host dinner parties, a lot of times I see people in their kitchens. If you're a very extroverted person, don't think you need to be very introverted and very buttoned up, because that's not who you are, right? I want to see that person when I meet them for their interview. And so be as creative as you want. Remember, it's a business school application. Most importantly, we want to see your face, so no slideshows. We want to hear your voice, so no voiceovers. And if you do something outside or in a loud environment, watch the playback. We sometimes hear airplanes and like trucks going by, and then we miss what you're saying. So just be a little bit cautious of that, but have some fun with it. And finally, we do have a required in-person interview. It is by invitation only, so it's a sign that you're advancing forward in our admissions process. We interview all over the world in major hub cities, as well as here on campus. If you prefer, for example, tomorrow I'm flying off to China. My colleagues have been in North and South Asia, and our dean is in Europe at the moment. So we do our best to come to a hub city near to you, but you're always welcome to come back to campus if you'd like. So the application cycle for this season is closed. We are making final decisions on a week from Monday for the class that will matriculate this June. So today we're talking about future classes, specifically the class of 2021, which would start in June 2020. The application will open this summer, sometime in July. The deadlines for round 1, 2, and 3 will be very, very similar to what we had this year, early October, early December, and early to mid-February. The next question I always get is, do you fill the class right away? No. It's like Legos. We're trying to build a class as we go. It's always better to get in at the beginning, be a part of the building of the class, so round 1 or round 2, but it's not pertinent. We do not fill a class before we reviewed and met every qualified candidate rounds 1, 2, and 3. If you're a non-US citizen, especially to our friends that are not here on campus today, I would highly recommend you apply in round 1 and round 2, though it's not required. There is just a lengthy visa process potentially ahead of you, as well as preparing yourself and potentially your family to move to America. Having less than 2 months to do that can just add a layer of stress that you might not need, but we do not have a hard rule about when our non-US citizens apply to the program. So I just have one more video, just to stop. You know what, I remember. I was making this slide last night, and then I remember we had this video that really, I think, does a better job of telling you what this community is about. It's less than 60 seconds, so if you'll bear with me for that, I think it's really telling. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We could stick around for a few moments in the room to answer questions. If you haven't already, visit our website, please do. Register your interest with us to continue to learn about the program and the community and what's happening as our students graduate and go back off into the real world. But we hope to see you at a future event. We travel all over the world this summer and the autumn. So if we're in your community, please come out and meet us. We'd love to see your faces. Thank you everyone for joining us from around the world. Have a great weekend ahead.